And thank you for the invite. That's correct that I promised for some years ago to go more in depth with one of the passion with the how to balance a ganache, which I see as a very key point in the way when you produce in the lab today. So basically for this day it will be quite much theoretical stuff, because I want to go more in depth with the ingredients to get you understanding in how it's reacting in a different way. And also in the end we will do some practical work in how to work with the balancing system. This presentation is built up from Alexander Bordeaux, who created a ganache solution, and I also take this program to show you how it's actually working. I know maybe basically you will not work that much with the program, but I know that you will have, for the sales team, Pascal, I know you will work quite a lot with the balancing. For the sales team, you will basically have customer asking for how to do those kind of balancing technique with the different chocolate. Because this is not only a matter in how to balance a ganache, it's also a matter how to balance a chocolate mousse, crémeux, and different creams as well. That's basically the same stuff you are going through. But here we point out the ganache that we are making when we do pralines and when we do the framer ganache as well. So I will go more in depth with that. And please reach out with questions, because I know after maybe there will be a lot of frustration about what they're talking about, and also what can we use that for. But I know if you have all those tools in your boxes, I know also you are prepared more for the question from the customer as well. So everything is built up from the ingredients that we are working with when it comes to chocolate and when it comes to sugars, sugar alcohols, cream and butter. That's the basic thing that we have a definition when we talk about ganache. And those we have split up in two different ways. When we, for example, work with the ganache that I will show today, because we have the terms that is framer ganache, and framer ganache is the one that you cut with a guitar, and the molded ganache is the ganache that you use in praline molds. So that's two kinds of ganache we will consider today, also due to the fact that that's the most interesting part for chef today. When it comes to that, there's a big difference when you start to balance a ganache for the molded pralines, and when you also start to balance a ganache for the frame ganache. So that's quite a big difference on that. In the end, which I also will go through, is that we are also talking about shelf life. So shelf life will also be one of the key points today, how we measure the water activity and what is the water activity in our product. So that's basically the few ingredients we're talking about. When it comes to chocolate, we talk about couverture chocolate, and I know there can be a misunderstanding in what is couverture chocolate, because couverture is that you cover something. So it's again a word that can be misinformative, because a couverture chocolate is not describing how fluid the chocolate is. is just describing that this chocolate you can use for cover. So I know for some price lists, I don't know the Pulse price list, but a lot of price lists you mention a couverture chocolate, but for a customer they don't know anything about the chocolate when it comes to couverture chocolate. So even customer can think, okay, couverture chocolate, is that a non-timber, or is that a compound, or what is it? Because if you translate this, it will more or less be like a chocolate you use for covering, which also is a non-timber compound. But the professional terms here is a real chocolate, where you in the dark chocolate is talking about cocoa mass, sometimes also cocoa powder, and cocoa butter, and then sugars. And why using cocoa powder in chocolate? Sometimes it's necessary to use extra cocoa powder to give more strong, give more body in the chocolate, but also again to give more taste. So that's the key point when you add cocoa powder in chocolate. Basically, in the chocolate that you have, it's made by cocoa mass. You don't add any kind of cocoa powder in this one. So it's basically when you are talking about 70-80% of chocolate, you sometimes have to add more cocoa powder to add more flavor in it. And then in the end you have some types of emulsifier. It can be soy lecithin or sunflower lecithin. There's also chocolate without lecithin, which are more common request today, that they want a clean chocolate, so they want a chocolate without any kind of lecithin, which also is an option. So the basic stuff when you have lecithin emulsifier in your chocolate is to make all the ingredients work together. It's also gives stability in the chocolate. It gives the right fluidity. If you don't have lecithin in it, you may imagine that all the ingredients try to separate together. Which means that you have, when you temper the chocolate, you have to have much more focus on the chocolate when it's not considered emulsifier. So, in that word, it's easier to work with chocolate with emulsifier than it without. So you have to think about that as well. Milk chocolate, the same story. Here you have full cream powdered milk. It can be full cream, it can be low fat, there can be different types of milk powder, even though it can be caramelized milk powder. So when you have milk chocolate, you can have a lot of flavor in it, and in the end, it's a matter of the taste. You can easily, and also the price, you can easily taste. You can also see it on the chocolate. When you have a very cheap milk powder, you will also see when it's exclusive, because it's always a matter of the aftertaste when you have milk powder. The things with milk powder is that you have to think in the shelf life, because if you take the milk powder and actually put it the product in front of it can be a lightened room. Now we're talking about the pralines. Then you have a shorter shelf life because you have a lot of milk powder, and the milk powder consider milk protein and milk fat. So that is some of the things that you have to consider when you work with milk chocolate. So the oxidation from the milk powder have a huge impact on the chocolate. So you have to think very much how to store your pralines when you have it with milk chocolate. oxidation is one of the key. The cheaper you have the milk powder, and also if you have a chocolate with a lot of milk powder, then you have speed up the oxidation, which means that you have a very short shelf life on your pralines. You may think that milk powder is like a tube with a lot of holes inside, where you have you can have all the humidity, you can have all the oxidation from the room. It can actually enter the pralines. So that's why milk chocolate is always a shortened shelf life that, for example, dark chocolate. I see a lot of shops that actually put the pralines in front of it can be a display where you have a lot of light from the roof, or also light from the windows, which means that you can see that the chocolate actually changing. The surface on the chocolate is changing because the milk powder start to denaturate in the chocolate, and that means that it's starting to get whitening, and that's due to too much the milk powder that you have in the chocolate. Today, a very cheap chocolate, milk chocolate, will always consider a lot of milk powder, and in the end, it can taste very nice because you can put a lot of aromas in it, so it's tastes very nice, but the shelf life will maybe be quite short.
And
Yes.
what kind of milk powder? How do you consider cheap milk chocolate and an expensive milk chocolate? Is it the fat content of your milk powder,
It can be.
or the quality? Like, how do you say this milk powder is a high quality milk powder, and this? How do you see it?
Imagine when you have how to make milk powder. You have a huge silo, and the milk is going into an inner tube and spraying the milk out to the very hot surface, and then there's a scraper which scrape the milk powder to the bottom, and then you start to refine the milk powder. The time how much you actually you steam it, that's more or less the time you steam it. That's give a good milk powder or short milk powder. So it's depending. We also call it a crust. This milk crust will in the end consider a lot of humidity, because it have only be steamed for a short time, which means that in the milk powder you have still a lot of humidity, and it's also in the end a matter of the fat content in the milk. So you can separate all those special things in the milk powder, and in the end you actually take the crust and refine it. So it's also the refining of the milk powder that's depending in, is it a good milk powder or it's a fatty milk powder, actually, so to speak. So that's the definition in how you separate the fat, the protein, and also the water in the milk powder. And after you have created this crust, you can caramelize it to give more flavor in the milk powder, which means that, for example, our gold chocolate is also containing caramelized milk powder. So that's, you can play a lot of things with milk powder. It has a huge role in the chocolate, milk chocolate and white chocolate. And then there's also there's one more thing, because when you make milk powder, you can also add some starch, and you add some starch in the milk powder to have more milk powder, actually, which means that some milk powders that you're buying, they add starch to avoid the humidity to enter the milk powder. But when you make chocolate with starch, it also have a huge impact on the fluidity. So that's also a very cheap milk powder. So the more clean the milk powder is, the better it is in the end. That's normally the standard with everything. The same procedure with white chocolate. We have the same ingredients. And people think white chocolate has to be as white as possible, but it's not true. White chocolate more or less consider cocoa butter, sugar, and emulsifier, and milk powder. But you can get white chocolate which are more or less as white as a paper, or like this one here. And people think, okay, this is a really good white chocolate, but it's not true because it's containing a lot of milk powder. So this milk powder will have a huge impact in white chocolate, and due to oxidation, it will shorten the shelf life when you're working with those kind of milk powders. So it's not a high quality chocolate when it comes to very white chocolate. Think about that. Think about those things also for customer when they store the product with especially milk and white chocolate. Don't put it in front of the window and don't put too much light on it because it's a quality perspective. If you have too much light, it will actually create the oxidation even everywhere where it is. That's also you can easily see it with, for example, our gold chocolate or the white chocolate is changing the color, because if you put too much light on it, it will automatically change because the milk powder will start to denaturate. Do it make sense? Mm-hmm. When it comes to sugar, we are, you know everything about the sucrose, standard sugar, which will automatically be the standard ingredients in every kind of our product. In the ganache, it's maybe not the best solution when it comes to standard sugar, because sucrose is a basic sugar which is separated, and it's so easy for sucrose to get back to original crystals. So when you maybe know that you have created a ganache sometime where you use sucroses, and after a while you can start to feel that you have crunchiness in your ganache, and that's when you only use sucrose in your ganache, you will have this problem, because sucrose is getting back to original crystals after a while. We also call it denaturation. It's denaturate to original crystals. And again, only working with sucrose, basically in caramels, ganache as well, it will have a huge impact after a while, because customer, I know basically when you make a salty caramel, you start with sucrose, caramelize it, add cream, add salt, add butter, and then you have a very tasty and nice caramel. Put it in your praline shells, and after maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, it starts to get crunchy. And that's because the sugar thinks, okay, now I have done my job. I start to go back to original again, because there's still some water in the caramel, and the sucrose will bind the water, and it will start to crystallize. So that's why in every kind of caramels you also had to add glucose to avoid denaturation. So, but anyway, it is a very important ingredient still. Dextrose more or less in fluid version, but also in powder version. Maybe you know dextrose as an energizing product. It is basically in every kind of energizing bars and also tablets as well. In those chewing wine gum, you can get this power dextrose energy bars as well. So it is monosaccharide, as you can see here, which means, and that's because it's quite good for sport, because it goes direct into the engine. Sucrose before it has to be splitted, so because it's a disaccharide, so it has to be changed. This is a monosaccharide, so it's full power when you eat it. So that's why mostly when you make power bars for sports people, you use dextrose as an energizer, because you have full valuta for when you eat those kind of sugars. Don't eat too much because it's also binding the water, which means that it's not that healthy for the blood pressure as well. So here it has a huge impact for ganache as well, also because you have, as I said, it's binding the water, and it lowers the water activity quite aggressive. We basically use dextrose powder for ganaches where we have a lot of water in, for example, fruit puree. So ganache with a lot of fruit and fruit puree, we add dextrose instead of glucose. But you will see later on. Like dextrose, we also have fructose, with it's coming from all the fruit and the berries. The things with fructose has a quite high sweetness point with us. It's very sweet. So we want to avoid any kinds, not avoid, but we want to lower the amount of fructose in ganache, because it is quite heavy in the sweetness point. Combine it with the dextrose, those two kind of sugars, fructose, dextrose, it has a huge impact in lower the water activity, which means that's again one of the things that we want to avoid. We don't want too high water in our ganaches. There's also, in combination, you have fructose, dextrose. That's also one of the key when it's talked to recrystallization, because as I said before, the sucrose will go back to original form. When you have fructose, dextrose, it will actually avoid the sucrose to go back to normal form. So combine all those sugars together, you will have a very nice texture in your ganache. And then we come to glucose, which are basically the main body in a ganache, together with inverted sugar. There's a lot of explanation in the glucose, because when we talk about glucose, we also talk about the DE. The DE is a dextrose equivalent, which means how many times is the starch in the glucose is broken. So if you have a DE on 20, let's say you have a starch chain that you cut in 20 pieces, and the more you cut it, the more water it can bind, which means the higher the viscosity, the higher the DE is, the more water it can bind, and also less viscosity it is. So if you have a DE 60, it is cut it 60 times and can bind much more water than, for example, a DE 20. So by choosing the right glucose syrup for the ganache, you also choose to have a much longer shelf life and much lower water activity. So when you choose the glucose, you have to find out what is the DE in the product. We can see here, if you see, we have here, maybe you can take a stick. This is a DE40, which means that you have a glucose, which where the starch is cutted, so to speak, 40 times, and it's quite long. It has a long tail, and if you, for example, use this to make a salty caramel ganache, you will have a very long ganache, which not will be that easily to pipe, because it's quite long. And when you have here the DE60, it's much more fluid. And this one here is very, very nice to use for all our ganaches, because even that is quite fluid, it's easier to capture all the free water in the ganache. So when you have to choose, for example in Denmark we only have this one here, which are quite viscose. So when you have to choose, please choose the DE60. I know that the one they have here, it's also, I don't know the one that you bring through, if it's a DE60 or 40. But I think it's a DE60 because it's look very fluid, and which are quite easy to work with. So think about the DE, and especially also when you creating caramel or you creating a frame ganache, for example, because for the molded ganache it maybe doesn't matter for that, because you have a quite fluid ganache anyway.
Okay, so I remember when we made some skumboller 4 years ago in Probakeriet, then you used the glucose together with our marengsvitte, and we're going to do that later today as well. And then I think you said, okay, this marengsvitte is really good quality, but also the glucose was the right dextrosity. But we sell 3 different kind of glucose.
Okay.
But I'm looking at the product sheets now, and it doesn't say no. But I remember when we were in the test bakery 5 years ago that you said, okay, this is the right. So I'm just taking notes, because this is a good concept if we try to convince our customers to make skumboller, as you do in Denmark, to make them aware that okay, we have marzipan on paste, which is good for the soul, and we have excellent marengsvitte, and we have excellent glucose, and we have both non-temp and real chocolate to cover them up.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just taking notes.
Yeah, because it's everywhere where you consider glucose in your recipe. It's not only the ganache, it's also when you make those skumboller, but it's also when you make glazing, for example, glazing for cakes. If you can easily see it, if you make a glazing with DE40, you have a very elastic glazing, but you switch to a DE60 instead, you have a very nice glaze.
Exactly.
Because it's much more fluid.
Trude Beate, could you just take notes and make Turid update the product sheets? Because we sell sucrose and we sell glucose. So and also the white shells and the milk chocolate shells. So we get all these good tips and ideas in on the product sheets that we have. I think that's good. Yeah, that's insightful information that we should pass on to our customers and know ourselves.
But it also avoids to give it give actually the ganache a very elastic look, elastic and shiny look when you make your ganache. I know you cover it with chocolate, so anyway, but in the end it has a huge impact in the shelf life. Because if you can avoid the recrystallization, then you also have a much longer shelf life on your product, which means in the end that you will have a better looking molded ganache or frame ganache. But sometimes it can be very difficult to explain that for customer because they don't know anything about the DE and why should I choose. And sometimes the DE 40 here is much more. It's actually don't cost the same as the DE 60. So it's also price wise a topic that could be interesting to have in mind.
How much different between the sweetness power is between the? Is it?
Yeah, I have a list. Yeah, there's basically the sweetness point is basically the same. Here you just think about that the chain, the starch in the glucose is cut it more in the DE60 than in the DE40. So the sweetness point will not have an impact in this process. So again, I have a table about the sweetness points that I can show you later on.
Okay.
But again, just to know that the impact and consider the amount of glucose in the ganache is quite important. And here you can see the process, because if you have maltodextrin, I know maybe normally you're not using a maltodextrin in your ganache, but in basically maltodextrin is it optimized when you have fat in your recipe, because maltodextrin both interact with the fat but also with the free water in your ganache. So that's why you sometimes use maltodextrin. But the mix between glucose will always consider the DE solution in your ganache. So that's one of the key, and you will also see it later on today. Sorbitol, which are sugar alcohol. I don't know the amount in Norway, how much is allowed in the recipe. Basically, we say that about 10% of the sugar is allowed in a recipe. Do you know the percentage in Norway? It's everywhere. It's in every kind of candy.
I can ask ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's usually the regulation in Norway is really extremely similar than European regulation. So
Yeah.
I believe it's the same.
Yeah. I think. The advantage by adding sorbitol is if you imagine that all those ingredients together, if you have glucose, inverted sugar, sorbitol together, you will have the best and the strongest net to obtain all the bounded water, all the free water in your ganache.
ChatGPT says i Norge er det ingen spesifikke lovregler som begrenser mengden sorbitol som kan tilsettes i matvarer i forhold til sukker.
Oh, that's good. So you can actually make a ganache only with sorbitol. That's good. It's good. It's a good sugar alcohol because it has a strong obtain of water, and that's maybe one of the sugars that can obtain most free water in the ganache. which means that when you want to guarantee a shelf life about 6 months, you have to add sorbitol. If you go around 3-4 months, you can easily work with inverted sugar and glucose without any doubt.
Why is there is a legal value? Is there is any risk, any
Yeah.
cancer?
No,
So-
that's too much. In some country, you avoid not to use at all any kind of sorbitol because it also I don't know the English word. It binding water, which means that you will have digestive problems. Because it binds so much water. So if you eat too much sorbitol, you have bind the water which are in the food, and you will then have digestive problems.
Okay, so it's like
Constipation.
Yeah. So that's why. But anyway, it's we will never go over the 10%. In sometimes we can, but it's not that it's a big risk for that. But as long as we're not working with 50% of that.
And we sell these products as well as glucose. We have that.
Yes. Inverted sugar, same story. I brought this bucket from Premolata here, which are basically a different inverted sugar. But inverted sugar is it's fructose and dextrose, which means that it's a two types of sugars that is inverted, and you can do it just to mix fructose and dextrose together. Then you invert it. Actually, it is actually a simple process. The things are mostly confectionery is working with tremolin. Tremolin is a inverted sugar paste. It's easier to work with because it's a paste, and it's actually easier to rescale when you work with that. When you have inverted sugar in your recipe, it will avoid the ganache to dry out. And especially when you have a dark ganache, which consider 60-70% of cocoa mass, it will actually easily dry out if you don't have any kind of inverted sugary. So imagine that not adding inverted sugar in your recipe, after a while you will see that the ganache inside the pralines will shrink because it's starting to dry out. So by adding this, it will still keep the humidity in the ganache. It will actually bound the water in the ganache, and it will avoid this ganache to dry out. So you will have a full power of the ganache, even after half a year, without any doubt. The minus in that is that it's quite sweet. So you have to find the right balance between the amount of inverted sugar in your recipe and glucose as well, because the sweetness point is, as you can see it, quite high. You have, is that inverted, do you have tremolin, or is that inverted sugar, honey?
Tremolin. Sucralin.
Sucralin. Okay, that's the same.
Yeah.
So you can get inverted sugar like paste like this down there on the picture.
That's the tremolin. The tremolin is this one, totally white, and when you, yeah, maybe you can open. It's more or less the same.
This one is liquid.
It's liquid. Yeah, but when you stir in it, it's not.
Yeah.
Also like a paste.
On my recipes it says tremolin
Yeah.
because we call it tremolin in France.
Yes.
It's like the liquid version.
But the tremolin is also a brand name, right?
Mm.
Yes. Yeah.
from.
And I know in every French recipe you always consider tremoline.
We say tremoline.
Yeah.
And my apprentice said, "What is tremoline?"
Yeah, yeah.
Now you can tell Barbara that we have sucralin.
Oh, yeah, we ordered it.
Okay, good.
We have it. We don't have. There is no tremoline brand here in Norway. I don't think so. Never seen. There is this one from à la carte de ganache.
Yeah.
But it's more liquid one from France.
Yes,
It's more like
but
it.
it's the
Yeah.
same.
If you don't have access to even tremoline or those stuff, you can easily use honey, because that has the same impact in your ganache. So it also have fructose and dextrose, so that's the same. The only thing is that here it's stabilized. It's stabilized because they have crystallized the fructose and dextrose together. So that's the only things. So this, you can't avoid it in a dark chocolate ganache, because it will avoid you to dry out the ganache. So it's also playing an important role in the ganache. When it comes to ganache with milk chocolate, you can actually decrease it a bit, because it's not that important in a milk chocolate ganache. Because in a milk chocolate ganache you have milk powder, and in the milk powder you have milk fat. So milk fat, protein, and milk powder, not that it has the same impact, but it's more or less similar. So you can decrease the amount of inverted sugar in ganache with milk chocolate, and the same in white chocolate.
I remember, I don't know if it was you or Jostein told me a couple of years ago that you needed to help Sverre Sætre with his pralines and the shelf life, because the ganache shrunk.
Yeah.
Was this the answer?
That was basically the inverted sugar, because mostly recipe contains glucose, and I think, or the things are, then when you get a recipe from a book, you can see, okay, here is inverted sugar, you have glucose, you also have sorbitol. Yeah, but I only have glucose in my kitchen, so I just take glucose. And then this recipe will go from this chef to this chef, and it will spread out everywhere, and in the end the recipe only contains glucose. And when you start to grow your business, you're still working with the glucose, and then the troubles starting to spread, because when you in his case, where he has a dark chocolate ganache where you also have quite much fruit in, you special need to have inverted sugar in this, also to capture or bound the free water in this ganache. So yes, it helps quite a lot in the recipe. Yeah. So when you have those discussions, also when you working with that, Pascal, as well, also with customer, because this is a basic supporting with customer when they have those kind of problems in the ganache. It's basically because there's a misbalance between the sugars they are using in the ganache. So shrinking and humidity, water activity, and also to keep the flavor in the ganache, it's the basic stuff in those kind of things. And that's true. I also have pastry chefs that say, yeah, but I make some pralines for the guest. The shelf life is 3 weeks, and that's okay. I don't need all those ingredients. But in the end, it also a matter of having the right taste, having to keep all the flavors, because the sugar is also supporting, helping to develop and keeping the flavors in the ganache, especially when you working with fruit flavors. it can be very difficult to have a lot of apple taste in a ganache when you have a milk chocolate or you have a dark chocolate. So how to have a nice apple flavor in those kind of ganache? Then you have to think, how can I get apple taste in my ganache? There's one point, you have to infuse your apple to a very nice taste, which means you can't not just using apple juice. If you add apple juice in your ganache, you have a too high water activity, so you have to infuse your apples. How can you do that? You can make a apple juice paste, so you can actually evaporate all the water from the apples, and then you can start to make an infusion. So, and that's here where all the sugars is supporting you in those steps. So basically for Norway, there's quite many confectionery who make ganache with white berries, and they also want to have those white berries very tasteful in the ganache. So they have to rethink, how can I get this berry very tasty in my ganache? So then they have to consider, which kind of sugar am I working with, and how can I make a fruit berry taste in this ganache? So there's always an option. Then we have the sweetness point index. It's what we call the relatives in the sugars. So it's always a matter of consider the right sugars, but in the end, we consider the inverted sugar, the glucose, and the sorbitol. It's basically those kind of sugars we will work with in the kitchen. Question for the first part?
I can just summarize what we talked about in the break. So we tried to challenge Kent. How should we approach customers with regards to when we want to sell a high quality chocolate compared to a low quality chocolate? Like, what are the main differentiating factors? And what he said was basically a repetition of what he said earlier, but there are like five factors that are important. One is the shelf life we talked about. The second is the viscosity. Then it's after when you do, it's the workability. It's like when you have a chocolate like 811, for example, it's very versatile. You can use it in different applications. You can use it in cakes, in desserts, in mousses, and also there are two properties when you do the temperate things that's also distinguishing high quality from low quality. It's the glossiness, the shininess you get when you temper it. It's better with high quality chocolate because less milk powder, and also the snappiness. So those five arguments you should have in the back of your head and always argue when somebody wants to sell lower quality chocolate.
Also, again, when we take the milk chocolate, because it's not normally the customer don't know why they specific have chosen this milk chocolate. Sometimes it's because they like it, and brand-wise, it's also because it can be the brand, but they may be not thinking in, okay, this chocolate is that actually the chocolate that I can use everywhere. Because a chocolate for the right viscosity, which are very fluid, which are very useful for enrobing, is maybe not this chocolate you have to use to create a ganache. Because to create a ganache, you don't need too much milk powder in your milk chocolate. So maybe you should choose another kind of milk chocolate. So it's always a matter of asking the right question to the customer and support them with the right answers. So, and that's I know mostly say, okay, we want this milk chocolate because we know it. But there's a lot of types of chocolate that you can offer them. So it could be more interesting to be curious and ask what are you going to use, or which kind of application are you working with, because then they also feel, okay, he or she has a very interest in supporting you with the right chocolate. Okay, we come to the liquids, which also in this case is the cream. The cream, consider in all the aspects in what is the liquids. Basically all recipe contains cream or milk, and in this case it's a matter of which kind of cream they are using and which kind of milk, because if you do the right balance you can even use water in your ganache. To create a water ganache is no problem. It's again just a matter of the right balance. If you don't have if you don't have any kind of cream in your ganache, you add water instead, and the fat that you actually had in your cream, you will find it anywhere else, basically in the chocolate. So in the end, you can use every kind of liquids that you want, but mostly use cream or milk, because it's like adding milk in the coffee. You capture all the flavor from the coffee beans by adding cream, because the fat in the cream cover the flavor in the coffee, and when you have it in your mouth you can taste all the flavors in the mouth on one time. That's the same case here. You actually cover all the flavors. I know also the one that drinking black coffee, that's also like eating ganache with water. You don't cover the flavor, you have to investigate in the flavor. You have to find the flavor in the chocolate when you creating a water ganache. But it's possible, easily possible to make a water ganache. And we have more and more people asking to create water ganache. So water ganache, like if you want not to have any kind of vegetable animal product in it, you can easily do it. Instead of fat from the butter, you add oil, rapeseed oil or sunflower oil. So it's just a matter of the balance. Butter here, there's two things. We have anhydrous butter, which contains 0.1% of water, and then we have our standard butter, as you know. You can use it salted, unsalted, it's up to you. I prefer always the salted, because the salt from the butter actually speed up the flavor in basically every kind of product. So for those who prefer unsalted, no problem. But here, there's again no problem by having this butter or this butter. For longer shelf life, it's actually most common to use this anhydrous butter. And anhydrous butter, they took out every kind of flavor. They also took out the water. So it's easy to work with. And I know that Debic created for some years ago ice cream butter, which is basically the same. Or there is a French company, Corman. You know it, Corman. It's a French company. They make a lot of every kind of butter. That you use this butter for the pastry, this butter for ganache, this butter for. They have a lot of melting points in the butter. They are quite nerds in those kind of things.
It's on the right is clarified butter.
Clarified, where you mean that you melt the butter?
You can buy, for example, Tine have Klar butter. Klar smør.
Yeah.
So is it this one, or is it because they just melt it, separate the water from the?
The things are that it's going through a process where you changing the melting point. So you can have a melting point on 17, or you can have a melting point on 28, for example. So you can have different clarified butter with different melting points. And that's because they put it through a different system when they clarify. So it's depending in which kind of butter you're using. Basically, you can clarify butter and use it like this, yes. But think in, we will talk more about that. Think in the cement, the stabilizer, the texture in the ganache. It's two things. That's the fat. The fat in the ganache is the one that is actually the cement in the ganache that keep the ganache to be soft or hard, which are very interesting when you're working with molded pralines or a ganache that you have to cut in a guitar. So it's important to choose the right fat. The more soft fat you have in your ganache, the more soft ganache you have. So you have to find the right balance. So this is the hard fat. So the cocoa butter is the hard fat, which means that's the cement in your ganache. And you say, okay, yeah, but what about the cocoa mass, the dry solid? The dry solid has an impact on the texture and the taste, but this is the cement. That's the thing that built your stability in your ganache. Without this, you don't have stability. And too much soft butter, the soft fat, it's not creating any stability. So you have to have at least more than this for the frame ganache than you have soft fat.
We have a butter from Vendelboe called Roast and Fry, which contains 76% sunflower oil and 21% butter oil, they call it. Maybe this is what Pascal is referring to. Maybe we should try that through the Beate and see if that's a good product to use when using ganache, because then we could inform our customers of this in combination with the cacao butter.
As I remember, it made only to when you have to cook something, because the melting point on this, as I remember, the melting point is quite high because they use, is that sunflower oil or rapeseed oil?
Yeah, sunflower oil.
Okay, so the melting point is quite, the temperature, roasting temperature is quite high.
The smoke point.
Yeah. So I will not recommend that because it's a soft fat.
Okay.
So it will never set. A standard butter like this, it will set.
Okay.
It will give some stability. This is just like add some oil in your ganache, so it will be soft.
Den har også en sånn bitsmak.
Exactly. I remember it's like a taste in the fat.
Okay.
Which are not good. So, but keep in mind that the fat here play also a role in the balancing process. Here we actually have a standard ganache. We used this for a food fair for some years ago here in Oslo, in Smakmessen. So here you can see where we play with a lot of ingredients. And just to take here an example, So the program is actually built up like this, where we have the ingredients here. And as you can see here, we work with quite much water. The water here is passion fruit, and we also have mango. In the mango we have a lot of fibers, which contains the fiber in the ganache. And then we working with the glucose DE60. And because we have a lot of water from the passion and the mango, we also use dextrose here. And we also want to have long shelf life, so we add here around 2% of sorbitol. And the stability is coming from here, the milk chocolate and the dark chocolate. Even though it's not with the stability here, so we also add more cocoa butter and the concentrated butter here. It's a long list. So this will have a very long shelf life, at least as 6 months, by having those kind of ingredients in your recipe. I could do it much more easy. If I don't only want 2 or 3 weeks, I can remove more or less the sugars, and then I can only use dextrose here, because dextrose is actually evaporate. It binds all the free water in this ganache, and then I can just take the cocoa butter here. But it's due to long shelf life and due to have the right stability that we have all those kind of ingredients. So this is example in having a balancing of a standard recipe with fruit taste. And for those reason here that I have that much water, I also have it in the program as well, but in this reason here I have to consider about that I still have a lot of free water, so I still to find all the balancing, all this I have to find here. This part is actually keeping the water here and give the texture, give the balance in this recipe. But anyway, I have a very nice taste of especially passion and mango in this recipe. This is only an example.
On the fruit puree, there is sometimes sugar.
Yeah.
Just as a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Poiron usually have 100% no sugar added, but some have sucrose inside.
Yeah.
Which.
And yes, you're right. And basically they also added with 10% of sugar when they do the puree, also to keep the color and keep the taste perfectly. So they actually add some percentage of sugar in this.
So it's affecting the recipes.
Yeah, but it's already calculated in the program. So now we are coming to how to build up this recipe. And I have 6 slides here where you can see how to build up the different aspects. In this case here, it's a dark molded ganache, which means that it's all the ganache that I put in the pralines in a mold, in a chocolate mold. So the ingredients could be anything that is in this circle. So here we have, for example, the red one is all the liquids. That is all the free water I have in the recipe. And to calculate it the right way, I consider to maximum to have 20% of water in my recipe. Not that I have 20% non-bounded water in my recipe, because I use all the sugars here. I have the sugars here. I use these sugars to bound the free water. but in totally it's 20% water maximum. The sugars here is about from 22 to 38% in total. And for this molded, I use around maximum 18% of cocoa butter. And again here, the dry substance, which is all the fibers, is maximum 14. So the butter oil, as you can see, is here. I call it butter and oil because that's all the soft butter. I started to say that in the molded ganache, it's not that important that you have a specific balance in the soft butter, because you have a shell that is actually keeping the texture. It's more when you're working with a frame ganache. So the frame ganache is much more important when you work with the soft butter, and again also here the cocoa butter as we have here. So you can see the difference between the soft butter and the cocoa butter here. It's not the same, but it's similar. More or less 50-50. And when it comes to the milk molded chocolate, it's basically the same. The fiber is going down because we don't have that much fiber in our milk chocolate, because the fiber is switched to milk powder instead, so we don't have that much. It's more or less the same here. The white chocolate is also the same, and basically when we talk about the white chocolate, it's similar to the milk chocolate because we don't have any changes at all. Not that is a figure in this slide. So when it comes to the dark frame ganache, then we have the option that we have here the maximum on 21, and we also have the maximum on 20 here. But again, it's depending in how much fiber we have in, and it's again also depending in the water and the sugars. So that one of the key which are quite important. The more we go to the soft side, the more cocoa butter are we here adding. So from more or less here 60-40, we go up here on the cocoa butter, which means now we adding more stability because we also adding milk powder from the milk chocolate. So we have more softness in our base actually. So we have to give it more cement for this frame ganache. So we have to add in the recipe much more cocoa butter. That could be so that mostly confectionery think, okay, but if I need more stability, I just add more milk chocolate. But by adding more milk chocolate, I also add more milk powder, which are soft fat. I also add more sugar. So it's much easier just to add the stability, which are the cocoa fat. So that's the easy part to do. And the last one here, the white frame ganache, you can see I up around 32% of the cocoa butter in this case. And that means the soft fat is more or less, I will say that we go more for 5% than we go for 9% on this one. A golden rule I always say is that we take 1/3 of soft fat and we have 2/3 of the hard fat. That easy golden rule to work with, because then we make sure that everything is aligned with the stability. Do it make sense? Sure? Good.
Are we gonna test it today?
Yeah.
That's good. Because I always add more chocolate.
Yes, I know.
That's it.
I'm gonna jump from big to before topic. This is liquid. There is water inside because it's drying.
Mm.
How many percent?
How many percent water?
Kind of in the glucose, depending the glucose, I guess.
I had to look into the spec on that because it's.
Just
But it's already calculated in when you do the program. So when you have the program, it's already calculated. So that's but it is now it's also the bounded water, but there is water a kind of in it.
yes.
But you also have to consider that the starch, which are the stabilizer in the glucose, is also cut. So it's actually bound all those water molecules.
So we could actually have glucose DE60 powder
Yes,
in a way.
because that's dextrose, a kind of glucose powder. You can actually use it like a dextrose.
Okay.
So which means that it's a DE100.
Because it's dry.
Yes, because it's a powder form.
So it's about the water content.
Yeah.
The DE.
The only thing is that you also have to have the elasticity in your ganache. So that you actually get from the glucose. If you don't have the elasticity, you again can avoid that your ganache is getting too dry and it's getting too hard. It will dry out. I know, yeah, you can put much more inverted sugar in your recipe, but in the end, you just align it in your recipe. So it's better to have the fluid glucose, because then you have the elasticity in your recipe, together with the inverted sugar. But yes, if you have a lot of water to start with, like the fruit puree, then I easily can use the hydrosed glucose. Yeah.
Sorry for jumping.
The partial glucose is 80% dry. The glucose, partial glucose is 80% dry.
Could you tell the difference between applying the cacao butter in the pellet forms and the micro?
The price.
Okay.
Yeah. In this case, that will not make sense to add the micro in the recipe.
Okay.
And that's also because in this case I have to melt it anyway, because I have to make sure that I add the temperate cocoa butter in the right condition. And we will also talk about it today. What is the temperature? Because I know there's many ways to create a ganache. I will show the way that we do it, but it will not make sense to use the micro. It's also more expensive. So here you can't sell more in micro. On those conditions, we will prepare to find the right ingredients, also to have a better water activity. Not that we have a water activity, but there is some rules that we can use to obtain a better water activity, and that's for example the glycerol, which I'm not thinking no one will go to use, because glycerol is mixed sugar alcohol that is not allowed to use. I even don't think anymore it's 5%, because it's better to have those sorbitols and or other stabilizers in that perspective. But in this condition, I will always say that with 3 kind of sugars, we always can get glucose, inverted sugar, sorbitol. Then you then you actually have a very good platform to build up your ganache. So, and the highlights in that is to obtain the right balance in the water activity. The water activity is to find the right balance between the bounded water and the free water. And the bounded water is already what is bounded by having the right ingredients, and the free water is the left. What is left in your recipe. And there's a lot of parameters how to get the right water balance. It's also the right way to make your ganache, which means that basically a lot of chefs, when they make a ganache, they mix all the ingredients, they boil the cream, pour it over the chocolate, and then they stir with a spatula, and then that's it. But that's actually also avoid every possibility to grow the moist in your ganache, which means that you allow the microorganism in your ganache. So by mix everything together in fine small molecules, you will get a much lower water activity in your ganache, which means all ganache today we will stabilize with our mixers. It's not you can't not only allow to stir in it and then put it in a piping bag and then it's it. You have to stabilize it much more, and that you do with the mixer. So every kind of ganache that we use, basically you will mix it with the mixer, or it can be every kind. Basically, it's a stick mixer we use. Truffle contains much more chocolate than you have cream and water, so you will basically not be allowed to mix it with a mixer because you have so much chocolate in Belgian truffle. So that's one of the things. We will measure the water activity today to show how it works, but it's just to see how we actually capture the free water compared to the bounded water. And I brought the equipment with me, so you actually can see how it works. For professional business, it will be mandatory to have those kind of things because it also allows you to put some measured shelf life in your product. You can have many ideas in your head how I can make my ganache, but if you don't know the water activity, you have huge problem to trace it. If you have, if you're starting to get molded ganaches as well, and a very good example is if you only use passion fruit, and you think, okay, now I switch my passion fruit with cream. So I take passion fruit and I take chocolate and all the other ingredients. What you don't know is that in passion fruit you have a lot of microorganisms from the seeds in the passion fruit. So if you're not thinking in how can I avoid that, so it will start already to mold after a few weeks because this microorganism will start to grow quite fast. So when you have those kind of things, you need to adapt the passion fruit, and instead of have passion fruit, you make a passion paste instead. So you cook a passion paste. So you cook it, for example, with passion fruit and sugar. Cook it to 65 bricks, and then you add it in your ganache. Those kind of things you have to think in when you make pralines with a longer shelf life. Do it make sense? Here is also the growth, because we can't avoid any kind of growth in our product. You can even see here with Giandua, all the fat base here, the fat based product. We have the caramel. It's quite easy to work with caramel because you have a long shelf life on caramel because it has been through a process where you capture and you evaporate all the free water. So it's quite easy to have long shelf life in caramel bases. Even though you have here the Giandua, which are fat. Not that we don't have growth in fat, but it's more limited. Marzipan, I don't know how much the water activity basically are in your marzipan, but it's also a matter of molding. With the wrong ingredients, it will start to grow. So then you will have the molding in your ingredients, which will have a minus effect in your product. Even though that sometimes we see colored marzipan that is maybe with the wrong ingredients inside, it starts to mold, which it destroys everything, even the marzipan and the chocolate. It starts to explode because the microorganism in the marzipan start to grow, and actually the chocolate marzipan is starting to explode. So it can go quite fast. Last Easter we have a company, they produced marzipan eggs for a shop, and they put in the marzipan, they put a fruit puree which they thought was clean. But the fact was that when they mixed it in the marzipan, it started to grow, and all this marzipan egg was exploded. So, and that was due to microorganisms growth in the product. So that's sometimes they also put alcohol in the marzipan. I don't know if you do it.
No, but we had a similar problem because we used to deliver our marzipan to Val Chocolade, who makes these marzipanvaler and has even candy. Yeah, you can buy by the hecto. But we had the same problem. We didn't kind of end up identifying the root cause. But it started when it was in the shop. It started to explode, so we had to retract it, and then they changed marzipan supplier. But that was 200 tons a year marzipan business.
Yeah. What I see in those cases, they add some alcohol in marzipan, and they like a preservative. So they add it to avoid those kind of things. It stop the growth, and yeah, then you actually have better condition for those kind of things. Otherwise, because if you're also thinking you have almond fat, you have sugar, and if all those almond maybe is not steamed the right way before they start to produce marzipan, then you bring it into the marzipan, and then you have the problems. But by adding alcohol in the recipe, you stop this growth. So that's I basically see it when producers working with those stuff, and that's yeah. You told me actually with alcohol in Norway is not allowed. Without only you have stuff in alcohol, 100% alcohol, right?
They have a law.
Yeah.
They have a
Crazy law about it.
okay.
And tax.
List about the growth and the shelf life. I must say that you can find a lot of lists on the internet about the water activity, because here when you have it around those 0.85, it max 3 weeks. But again, it's matter of the condition. It just it's not a fixed list, because you can't say, okay, my water activity is 0.7, so I have at least here 6-9 months. 6-9 months, it's also a long time. So how can I make sure that the taste is good after 9 months? This is the shelf life, but maybe it's still not taste good. If I have made my let's say a very special herbs that I have made in an infusing in the cream, I can't make sure that I have the right taste after 9 months. So this is only based on shelf life and not the flavor and texture and taste. But you will see today I have made a sample with a very short shelf life, and then I brought framer ganache that we can measure today as well, so you can see it. If if there is any caramel on the storage room, then we can try to measure it as well. It's quite easy. It takes around the fast measure time is around 15 minutes, and then we easily can see the shelf life, or we can see the water activity, not the shelf life. So that's the easy part to do. That was